Welcome. Welcome to Zenful Conversations. Let me just change this to speaker. There we go. We're here. You can find us having conversations daily in a private Facebook group for women. We're in our 4th year of a conversations. The conversations are remarkable. For more information on this group, our guest speakers, and all of our Zoom offerings, please visit zenfulconversations.com. My name is Zen Brown. I'm your host, and we're here today with our guest speaker, founder of Always on Purpose, author, speaker, leadership coach, and facilitator, zooming in with us from California, Eliza Wong. Amy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. Gosh, I thank you for taking the time, everyone, to hang out with me. This is awesome.
It is awesome. It is awesome. And it's a great group of women. So let me just give a little bit of information about Amy, and I'm just going to take it from her book cover, her book jacket. Eliza Wong is the founder of Always on Purpose. She is a transformational coach and facilitator working with the biggest names in tech, such as Salesforce, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Amy offers transformative leadership development and cutting-edge communication strategies, not only to executives and corporate teams around the world, but also in the halls of academia with institutions such as Stanford University and the University of California at Berkeley. Amy pulls from various disciplines, studies, and practices to find a conciliant approach to achieving genuine and lasting success, what she refers to as the fundamentals of thriving. For more than 20 years, Amy has devoted herself to the study and practice of transformation. As a certified executive coach using expertise in transpersonal psychology, design thinking, interpersonal neurobiology, and conversational intelligence, Amy has catalyzed transformative growth for hundreds of executives and teams. Amy graduated from UC Berkeley with a BA in mathematics and has an MA in transpersonal psychology from Sophia University. When she's not writing, coaching, and speaking, Amy spends time in Berkeley, California with her husband, her 2 children, and her 2 dogs. Amy, thank you again for coming and sharing your love and your energy here.
Thank you so much, Jen. That was a mouthful. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you know, we've been reading your book in our group. We're not like through it. We pull from we read from many books. We have many books, but we have been reading from this, and we're finding it rather powerful. I want to thank you for writing it, first of all. Thank you for writing it. But can you share a little bit with us about your journey that led you to this point in time with this understanding? Can you just give us a brief? Perfect.
Gosh, absolutely. Gosh, there's so much I could say about this. And, you know, I kind of working backwards. So I've been a coach for over a decade now, and I have worked with so many different amazing individuals, just a full spectrum of folks. At this point in my career right now, I'd say over the past 5 years, 4 years or so, I've been really heavily focused on leadership coaching and working in tech at the moment. But in the hundreds and hundreds of conversations that I have had over this decade, the same themes just kept popping up. And it was so clear to me that it's just everyone was suffering silently. Everyone suffers silently. Everyone thinks that, oh, I'm the only one that is struggling with this, or that believes this and shouldn't be, or doing this and shouldn't be. And, oh, and they've got it good, but I don't. And why is it so hard for me? And it didn't matter if you were, just graduating from college, or if you were a single parent, or if you were a CEO of a successful company. I mean, everyone was really suffering silently. And, all of my life, I have been so passionate and fascinated in the intersection between science and spirituality. So it's funny, I didn't know back then why I was so drawn to math, but truly passionate about math. And I get it now so that I can understand physics and quantum physics. That makes sense to me, right? So that was nice, but that passion for truth in that objective sense, and then the passion for truth in a subjective sense around spirituality, consciousness studies, really diving into Eastern mysticism when I was in high school, just so fascinated that all of my curiosities and my research that I was so immersed in really since childhood until now really started to come to life in my conversations. And then it was around 2014 that, well, I'll tell you this. So I was in the midst of certification for conversational intelligence, which really is the neuroscience of trust. Fascinating stuff. So fascinating. And I was so drawn to it. And it was just, I don't know how to put it, but it was I was learning the neuroscience of communication, but mainly rejection. And all of a sudden, I realized, oh my gosh, this is the missing piece that kind of puts all these pieces together that I had been working with clients to catalyze transformation. And I kid you not, it was the moment it was illuminated that, wait a minute, rejection is this fundamental for all of us. And it really, truly is primary. And oh my, like, just that's when I felt like fireworks went off in my head.
Wow.
And it was that all coming together. So in 2014, I was like, that's it. I know exactly what this book is. I know what it needs to be. I've got the formula. I've got like, this works for people. It's clear. And in 2014, I also knew it wasn't time to write the book because I was still in process of getting more research and having more conversations. And so through the lens of knowing what the book would be, I was having really rich conversations. And it was in 2019 that I thought, okay, now is the time. I'm ready. I got to do this. And so in a very beautifully synchronistic and magical way, it feels, the book really did come to life. And now here we are. So that's really how it's come to life. And, I have to say, it's one of those things where it wasn't, a lot of people will write a book because, it's a marketing tool, or a lot of people will write a book because they think they're going to make money off of it. But, in my case, I had to, because it helps people. And, the fact that like what I'm doing with clients on a one-on-one basis absolutely works. I'm like, well, that sucks then, because if you just, you're limited. I'm only limited to the folks I can reach in a day. That's not going to work. So I had to get it in book form and get it out in the world.
How are the sales going? Wonderfully, I would suspect. Yes.
Yeah. I have to say I have been so delighted because it's doing really well. In fact, okay, you're going to love this. This is such amazing news. So Oprah Winfrey has her executive producer. You might be familiar with her name. Her name's Sherry Salata, and she does amazing work in the transformational space. She was Oprah Winfrey's executive producer for 20 years. So she was running the whole show. She has recently gotten a hold of my book, and she's like, oh my gosh, this is the real deal. It totally works. I love this. And so so she's introduced it to the global community. I'm her book club choice. And this is so great. You ready for this?
That's
so
fantastic.
She's friends with Deepak Chopra. So she featured his new book, and she had him talking, and she would invite him to so, and like, they just finished. She's like, okay, now it's your book. And so now I'm invited. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like behind Deepak Chopra. That's amazing. Feels super good. So that's been really, really wonderful. In
that's over the top.
Yeah, it helps. Yeah, it's helping. It's working. It really does work for people. And that to me, Jen, it's just knowing that, because here's the challenge. It's one thing to think a thought. It's another to say it, right? But it's an entirely different thing to write it out for all audiences for all time. And so it was pretty clear that like what I can do in session with folks, I'm like, regardless of who you are, I can meld to your language. I can work with your argument. I can come up with ways to help you see your blind spots, but that's all unique. But then you have to capture that. And then you have to translate it into a body of work that is relatable and understandable for all audience. So that was the thing that really whacked me out throughout the writing process is, does this work is this applicable? So now that I'm on the other side of it and I'm getting the feedback that, yeah, this
Oh,
works.
that's awesome.
I'm
That's
like,
awesome. That
okay,
feedback,
that,
is so important.
yeah, yeah,
It-
yeah,
People don't realize how important their feedback is, because that's how you know what you're doing is right on target.
yeah. Okay. And you want to
Uh,
hear something really silly? Okay. Can I share with
Yeah.
you something? Okay. So, it's funny because I've made wonderful author friends in the process of this. And, everybody's been saying, okay, Amy, get ready for the haters. They're all going to come out and they're mean. They're really mean. And, you're going to have to brace yourself because that's just going to happen. And I'm like, okay, I can do this because I know the neuroscience of rejection and I know the tools and okay, I'm ready for it. Like the haters haven't come. And I'm like, well, is the book not good enough that it's not reaching enough people? Like, wait,
I
have I
don't
not
know.
arrived because the haters haven't come?
It's the law of
Isn't
attraction.
that
It's the
awful?
energy that we're sending out. You're leading with love.
Totally,
That's what you're
totally.
going to get
But
back.
no,
That's
the feedback I have to say though, I mean, I'm getting good constructive feedback, and obviously the book's it's not gonna be a hit for everybody. It's not, there's gonna be people that don't appreciate, like, for example, I did get feedback on Amazon that like way too much backstory. I just want the motivational message. And then yet there's all this feedback saying, oh my gosh, it's because there's so much vulnerable story. I was actually able to be vulnerable. So thank you. And so, you can't please everybody.
You can't please everybody, and that's really important to realize, because it'll stop you from doing what you need to do in life.
Yeah, that's right. That's
I'll
right.
tell you, when I first got your book and I opened it up, what struck me right away, I saw that feel it out, not figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that really, because I've been a pretty good figure it out woman. And it's like just the energy, as soon as I read it, the energy was completely different. Feel it out is soft and loving. Figure it out is giving me a headache already.
Yes.
So
Yes.
can you talk a little bit about that?
100%. I mean, this is one of the cornerstone ideas of what it takes to really thrive. And there's just so much to say about this, but I'll start by saying, something that we're not taught young, and something we forget in this journey that we're on. And I think largely because it's due to our educational system and just how we are rewarded and how we operate in our society. We forget that everything that we want, whether it's a new job or it's to retire or it's a certain amount of money, we forget that it's not the thing we want. We want the feeling we think we would have as a result of the thing. It's not just the thing. And so the ultimate map to the feeling state, that gets lost in translation. And what happens is we get so hard set and like, I'm after the thing. And, and you look back at your life and it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Why? Because it's just how we're trained. Go to school, get good grades so you can get a good college, get in a good college so you can get a good job so you can make lots of money and make lots of money. And then, yeah, there you go. And it's like, well, hold on. What's that all for? We're not taught to ask, what do I want to feel? What is this all for? We're trained to kind of chase after the thing and get rewarded for that. And it kind of it seems right to us. But then what happens is we get really good at figuring out our way to the thing. Here's the strategy. Here's the plan. Here's and we're constantly strategizing our way to a thing, often forsaking the feeling state we want, because we're so caught up on the thing. And in that process of doing this, what happens is a lot of times we will end up, and this was my case, we will end up with a great life. It's like, well, I got this. I mean, I kind of got everything I set out to. Why do I feel so hollow? Why do I feel unfulfilled? And then you kind of feel bad because you're like, well, there's really no room to complain here. And that can happen for folks. And why? It's because we're figuring out our way to an idea versus feeling our way into a desired feeling state. And so part of what feeling it out is really waking up to this reality and then getting really good at, okay, yeah, I got goals. I got visions. I got vision boards. Yes. And what do I want to be feeling? Like, yeah, I say I want a new job, but let's get clear. What is it that I want to feel? Now, just by getting clear about that and really illuminating that awareness for oneself, all of a sudden that kind of sharpens your perceptual lens just by getting clear on that. Now, once you get clear on what you want to feel, all of a sudden your world kind of changes a little bit. Not because the world changes, it's because your lens changes. Now you're going to see opportunities and possibilities, and you're going to see what is around you in a slightly different way because it's going to be more congruent to that desired feeling state. So all of a sudden, things might be more possible. There might be more options that you wouldn't otherwise see. And so that's a big part of the magic we feel once we start waking up to what's true. So that's a big part of it. And the best of it, of this feeling it out versus figuring it out, is it just feels so much more fun and fulfilling to go through your days navigating by feeling for that expansive feeling versus the constricted feeling. Right. So if you've got a dilemma on your hands and you're like, okay, do I take this job that kind of checks off all the boxes, or do I go to this conference that like is so fascinating that, I'm just coming up with two. I know it's like when you figure out that dilemma, it's like, okay, well, let me, well, that makes sense. But when you feel something out, it's, oh, this just feels relieving. This feels amazing. And when you can get good at reaching for the feeling that makes you feel expansive versus constricted, where the energy is more lower in your body, where it feels expansive and not heady and frenzy. Like you said, I've got a headache already. It's like, that's the figuring it out. When we can get good at really trusting that this is the path of least resistance to the path of most abundance in the most delightful way, and start feeling that, you will be so delighted in how that feedback, there's that word feedback, really proves, oh, okay, this is the way we could be going about it. It's just so much more fun and way more fruitful.
So I want to make sure I understand it correctly, because our feelings are friggin', I feel like a cupcake, a chocolate cupcake, and that's not a good thing to have. So we're talking more about our gut, our gut instinct, though, not our wishy-washy feelings. If I feel like this, I don't feel like exercising. I mean, there's a wishy-washiness to our feelings. They're very fleeting. So we're talking
for
more,
sure.
we're talking our gut instinct, right? And getting in touch with something deeper.
Yes, absolutely. It's really, well, it takes being really present, being more honest with yourself. Like, so it's what is it that I really want to feel? And we have to get really good at identifying what's wanted versus what, instead of avoiding what's not wanted. Right. And so if I don't know where you are in the book, but I really break this down in chapter 4, which is titled, I Should You Not, which
Right.
is all about the word should, right?
Yeah,
And
sort of
how
touched on that.
this is a powerful one, because that, oftentimes we'll be navigating, and what we're trying to do is we're really more avoiding negative feelings or avoiding negative consequences about what we actually really want. So to your point about, is it that feeling it out really is about dropping in to our gut? That's really what it's about. But it's recognizing, and it's listening for the voice and the feeling of inspiration. So have any of you here on the call, have you had that experience where you get an idea or something comes across your path and you get that feeling where it's like this breath of just like the breath of insight? It's like, where it feels like your breath got knocked into you, not out of you, but into you. Have you ever had that? Raise your hand if you've had that feeling before. And doesn't it feel so good? Like, it's so energizing. Yeah. So that's really kind of what we're looking for. And it's not like we're looking for that all the time. We're for example, like, okay, I'm going to have lunch. Do I want a burrito or do I want a salad? Like, where's the, it's not like that. Right? It's really more so as I'm kind of contemplating the bigger things in life, where's that expansive, life-giving feeling that just feels here in your gut, like you said, versus where it feels really frenetic up here. And then just being able to discern amongst the two is really powerful.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions or comments they'd like to ask? this is the time to do it.
Don't be shy. Don't bite. I promise.
There's any
I love
comments or
conversation.
all? Yeah, it's a lot of times they're just listening and intrigued by the conversation, and
Yeah.
they just like hearing what is shared, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I was having a conversation with somebody, and I said, about the should. Now we all talk, we're in our 4th year of conversations. I'm talking about enjoying our experience of life and improving our experience of life. We've talked a great deal. Last year was all about living the law of attraction. We realized this year is a little bit more on a little bit of self-discipline, because we need that.
Sure.
And so the should word has come up, and we very well know about our vibrations and what that does to it. I still said it in our conversation a few weeks ago when I was talking to this fella. And he said to me right there, he said, well, no, because I was talking about my meditation practice, not being where it should be. And he said, well, no, where it could be.
There we go.
And I'll tell you, just changing that word from should to could, all of a sudden, I think I have the greatest meditation practice in the world.
Yes. Oh, that's huge.
Because it's what I could have.
That's right. That's right.
Changing it from should to could was I just wanted to share that with you, because
oh my gosh. So much goodness. I'll expand on that if it's helpful.
Yes,
let me break this down, because I think this will be, I kind of map this out in the book, but it might be fun to have a conversation about it. But what I don't super explicitly say in the book, and this I'll end up mapping out in my second book at some point in the future. But what I find is super transformative to understand is that there's one, and I'm gonna invite you all to understand this. When we think about all things negativity, stress, anxiety, disappointment, frustration. Let's imagine, and I'm sure you've seen that, like you've got an emotional scale. If you know Abraham Hicks, she does that emotional scale, and you've got all the emotions. Here's neutral. Here's all the and positivity, all the negative emotions decreasing in negativity. Okay, so I'm going to give you a new way of thinking about this that hopefully will be an eye opener, because it's freed me tremendously, and I just love this. Okay, so if you can imagine this scale, here's neutral. Now, everything below neutral, whether it's as mild as confusion, all the way down to, is as intense to depths of despair. Everything below neutral is caused by one thing, only one thing. And when you get this, it's a game changer. But here it is. Everything, whether it's confusion all the way down to anger and revenge, it's this. Here you are existing. And the moment you resist what is, boom, you drop below neutral. Resistance to what is drops us below neutral. And so now what I want you to think about is each of these negative emotions isn't just a distinct negative emotion. It is a measure of resistance increasing in intensity. And so, really check this out for yourself. The only time we will drop below neutral is simply because we're pushing against what is. Now, what does that mean? Now, sure, it could be overt resistance, such as I get in the car, I got to go pick up my kids from camp, I'm running late, and all of a sudden I hit traffic and there's this accident and now I'm going to be super late. I'm like, ah, right? So that's overt resistance, where you're like, I don't want this. Boom, frustration and anger, right? That's obvious. But there are other ways in which we resist, and we don't really think about it, but here it is. Judgment. Anytime we judge ourselves, others, or circumstances, we're essentially pushing against what is. The moment we push what is, boom, we're below neutral, right? When we compare ourselves negatively, it's a form of judgment. I should be somewhere else. Now, here's the big unlock. Should is the hallmark indicator that you are using resistance to get ahead. Because think about it. Every single negative, I'm going to check this out with you. So let's imagine that, like, here's neutral, right? So let's imagine that right above neutral is the state of curiosity. Now think about and feel into that state. Like when you experience curiosity, is there any resistance in curiosity? What do you think? Any resistance?
Right.
No, it's open, right? I mean, there's not a tremendous amount of momentum, but it's lovely. It's open. Now, right on the flip side of curious, let's say on the other side of neutral, the shadow side of curious is confused. Okay, now think about and feel into confused. Is there any resistance in confused? Yeah, a little bit. Why? Because it's predicated on the thought. There is something I should know here that I don't. Should. And then you keep going. Now you're bored. There's something I should be doing that's not this. Now you're annoyed. He shouldn't be doing that. Frustrated. This shouldn't have happened. Anger. I should have blah, blah, blah. So essentially, we could identify in every negative state, there's absolutely a should going on. And so the reason I like to break down this word is like, well, wow, we've tricked ourselves into thinking that this word actually helps us move ahead in life when in fact, it just keeps us underwater. And, the bigger visual I want to offer here is like, think about resistance itself. Okay. Resistance takes resources. This takes energy. I mean, y'all weight train, anybody do any weight training? You build your muscle. What does that take? It's like, right. You've done it before. You lift something heavy. It's resistance, right? Your muscles get bigger, but it's resistance. It takes energy. Okay. So when we've got resistance going on, it's kind of like this. Let's imagine that each and every one of us has this channel for bandwidth, right? I hate to think that we're finite, but let's just, for the sake of argument, let's imagine that each of us have this channel for bandwidth. And when 100% of our bandwidth is flowing in one unimpeded direction from our untriggered optimal brain, survival brain quiet, that's flow. Have y'all been in that state of flow before? The loss of time, it just feels so good. Yeah, flow. So flow is 100% of your resources flowing in one unimpeded direction out to the connected world. Great. Okay. Now, if you've got shoulds running on in the background, oh, I shouldn't have eaten so much cake last night. I should have worked out this morning. I should have gotten more sleep. I should have prepared more. To the degree that you use should and the shoulds running in your equation, you're jamming up, right? You're jamming because that's resistance. You're jamming up that flow. So essentially you're operating on a day-to-day basis with just a subset of that bandwidth that you want to be working on. So here's the visual. Okay. I've got this pitcher of water here. You see this? Okay. So this is kind of heavy. I mean, maybe it's about 5-7 pounds or so. Now let's imagine that the weight of this water represents the amount of shoulds I got going on. I shouldn't have drank so much wine last night. I should have told my husband to pick up my kids earlier so that he's not late. I should have walked the dog. What, blah, blah, blah. Right. So now, okay, I'm going to hold this out because now that's my shoulds. So essentially when we're using shoulds to get along, so now I'm holding this out and I'm having this conversation with you. Now, can I do this with you? Yeah, but that's kind of distracting. And this is going to keep me from being totally present and totally available for you all. This is getting really tired. And the more I hold it up, the less effective. I was really tired. I can put down. the more, I'm not going to really fully be able to innovate, to co-create, to show up, to come up with the great ideas. And so this is what I want you to be thinking about in terms of what it takes to thrive. It's when we're resisting what is, we're using should. When we're using should, we're underwater and eating up our resources. Is there another way to go about it? Absolutely. We pivot from the pushing against what we don't want to what it could be, like you said, Jen, or what do I want versus what am I trying to avoid? Yeah. So the practice of that, I break it down, in the book, but I just feel like this is such a helpful aha for folks. Like, oh my gosh, if you really just want to thrive, recognize that the only reason you're below neutral is simply because you're pushing against what is. So if you make that and that alone your practice, to care about how you feel, catch when you're not feeling great, and then just like, wait, what am I resisting right now? Oh. And then you recognize, oh, that's futile. Why am I doing that? So just awareness often is enough to allow us to drop it so that we can float back up.
Yeah, resistance is huge. Well, and not only is it the actual thing, but then you have the resistance to deal with too. So you create much more for yourself.
Yeah. So I'm curious for everybody here on the call, what kind of shoulds do you hear yourself say? Like, what are your biggest shoulds in life?
Somebody
I
has one, I'm sure.
like Jen mentioned before, sometimes self-discipline talk can become a little bit limiting in the
Yeah.
sense that the language that we use when we talk ourselves may
Mhm.
seem condescending. And like you just explained, sometimes the language can result to be a way that you're lifting and is impeding your evolution in a sense.
Yeah. And so that limiting, so specifically, what might you hear yourself say to like, do you say anything like often that it's like, oh, I hear that. I say this to myself all the time.
Yeah, I should make better choices in terms of eating. I should make better choices in terms of time management. If I devote time to work, I feel guilty. I'm neglecting my personal life. If I devote time to my personal life, I feel guilty. I'm neglecting my laboral life. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I have that one a
Guilt
lot.
guilt is a big thing. Guilt.
Say that again,
Guilt is
Marja.
guilt.
Oh, Maria.
Guilt is a huge thing. We
Yeah.
feel guilt a lot as women, I think.
100%, especially if your mom, anybody, moms on the call here,
Mhm.
anyone have kids? Yeah, that's like,
Guilt. What about fear or confidence? I have lack of confidence that I can do something, you know. And I don't know if it's lack of confidence, fear. Where does that play in the scale of?
oh, that's a great question. Like specifically, so is it that you're feeling,
That I can't do
can you
it?
give me a bit more specifics? Because let's break this down. This will be great.
Direction someplace to go someplace. I know a lot of people rely on GPS now, you know, everybody relies on their GPS, but to go out and to go someplace where I've never been
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
scary, or you know, traveling on my own, doing it by myself.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't have the confidence.
Sure.
I haven't, you know, I was a stay-at-home mom and I mean, I know that's a huge job in and of itself.
Yes.
And it's what I always wanted. And so I have no regrets with that. But I suffer from migraine, so I was very limited. I did cleaning jobs, for it was the flexibility to do all the kids' activities, but also the flexibility if I had a migraine, I could clean another day. And so now I'm trying to figure out, yeah, we moved down here to Florida, and I'm trying to figure out my purpose, or what's the next step, getting back out there into the workforce. So that fear of, you know, the technology,
Sure.
and all that stuff. And you know, and as you get older, your brain's a little, you know, you haven't used it. And so just that fear and that lack of confidence.
Yeah. Well, you know, thank you for sharing. And I'm so glad you bring this up because, you know, it can be really powerful is to start the inquiry process. So, and you may have done this, but, you know, as a coach, my first thought is, okay, Maria, well, like follow that fear. Like, what is it that you're really afraid of? Like, where do you go? What happens? What do you afraid of?
Getting lost.
Okay. So keep going. So then you get lost. So
Getting
then
lost,
what?
getting in a bad section, you know, where you don't know where you are, and getting more and more lost, and
Yeah.
getting lost, I guess, is in not knowing how to get back, or not knowing where I'm going, and or getting into you know, traffic that's really bad, or, you know, whatever. Just
Right.
getting lost and getting into a situation where I don't know how to get out of it.
Got
Fear,
it.
I think mine is the fear of unknown.
The fear of the unknown.
Fear
Yeah.
of the unknown.
Yeah. I was just on a podcast earlier today, and I mean, that came up because it's just all of us would rather stay safe in discomfort than push the edges of the known into the unknown for fear of, and then we're like, for fear of what?
Yeah.
And so this is where we might want to check our operating beliefs, right? So Maria, you raised how many? Two
Kids.
twins?
No, two kids. Two
Oh,
kids.
2 kids. I'm like twins. I'm like, gosh,
They're
I mean,
almost like twins. They were 13 months
Yeah.
apart, so they were almost like twins.
yeah. Oh my God. Okay. So that right there, is that not one of the most magnificent, miraculous feats of humankind, is to raise humans to be self-sufficient, right? So what I know about you so far, Maria, is you are incredibly resourceful. and you are incredibly resilient. And I'm certain that you could probably figure out anything if you needed to. What's happening is that you're forgetting your innate resourcefulness and innate resiliency. And there is this unchecked fear that, oh my gosh, what if this opportunity that I'm flirting with right now, what if this is the one and only time things fall apart and I totally fall off the plank, right? This is it. I'm going to fail at this one. But the truth is, you've always figured it out. You've always made it work. So why is this time going to be the time that you're not going to be able to do it? Because guess what? You can. You do have the resourcefulness. You do have the resiliency, right? Yeah. But it's the fear, right? So fear is resistance in some way, shape, or form. So that's getting in the way of thinking clearly about, well, let's imagine I do get lost. Well, I'll ask for directions. I'll get out of the car and ask for directions. I'll go ask the station agent, if I'm on a plane and am I at the right connecting gate? I don't know. I'll ask for help, right? But we forget we have ways of thriving,
I think too, it comes to, as you get older and your brain doesn't remember things. And so someone will say, do this, and this. And I can only remember the first thing they just
One
said.
and two. Don't tell me more than two things.
Oh, what was that again? Or going to a job and having coworkers, and my brain is rusty and having to repeat it. So
I'm going to pause you right there, Maria. So I'm going to totally pause you. So the one thing that's so amazing about our human body and our brain is that it's totally plastic. And so I'm going to invite you, and I'm going to lovingly say, don't say that anymore, because your words create worlds. And so to continually affirm, oh, my brain is rusty. Oh, I'm forgetful. Oh, I'm not good at this. That's the reality that you keep walking into, and so it is a practice to be so pristine with our words, because it's easy to fall back into the narrative of the unideal and what we think is true. Like, oh yeah, I'm not great at this. Like, why would we affirm that? Why would we affirm that? And in the same way, I'm sure you did with your kids, like, oh, I'm stupid, I can't do it. You'd be like, what do you say? Like, don't say that. Right. It's like, we've got to do that with ourselves.
My kids say that to me all the time too. It kind of comes full circle.
Right.
Don't say that, you can do it. Yeah.
That's right. Well, I have to share with you all something that was just so delightful. So I have a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old. And my 9-year-old wasn't feeling super well, food poisoning, so couldn't go to camp the first day, and super bummed because it's this really cool aquatic camp. And this, Ayla ends up just doing research and somehow ends up on the topic of the placebo effect. And later that day it was like, oh my gosh, have you heard of this thing called the placebo effect? Like, this is wild, right? And like essentially saying, so our thoughts really do create. And I'm like, girlfriend, that's what I've been trying to tell you since you were like wee little. But it really clicked, like, oh my gosh, that whatever you're thinking, whatever, like you actually live into that. And this right there, the whole placebo effect thing, I'm like, how are we not all taking this more serious, that our thoughts create, that our consciousness creates, that our focus creates? It's just bonkers to me. It's just bonkers. But anyway, I say that because, it for all of us, we can look at that and go, right. So whatever I'm focusing on, I walk right into. So I'm going to be better at just catching this narrative. Like, you know what? And you want to choose something that doesn't feel untrue, but doesn't feel demeaning to your point, Lord, like you were saying, it feels demeaning. So maybe we say something like, I'm getting better at this every day. I love the fact that my brain grows and changes based upon my attention. And I love that this is possible. I love that I'm resilient, because I am. And I love that I'm still learning new skills. And just kind of reorienting the narrative so that it's expansive instead of constrictive,
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yes, I just want to share for me a struggle I've had. I've had I feel like a purposeful life, and I just retired from 37 years in the early childhood education development field. And I loved it. And once I was retired, I had all this time, which is a gift and a blessing, but I have all these dreams I want to do, but I'm procrastinating. And I know I
Oh,
was exhausted from so many years of work that, when I finally stopped taking care of family and now I'm focused on myself, all of a sudden it's like my energy level just planked out. I'm exhausted. And I'm like, but this is the time I want to start doing art and writing and, increase everything for my own practices,
yeah.
and I'm just procrastinating. It's a year later. And, I haven't done only a little bit of art, only a little bit of writing. And
Barbara. Barbara. Oh my gosh. So, okay. So friend, it's been a year that you've been retired. That's something. Okay.
Retired. Yes.
Yeah. That's beautiful and brilliant. And so I think if you're all picking up on this, everyone here, what I'm kind of hearing, Barbara, is there's a way you should be going about this. There is a ultimate should reality that you need to align to if you're going to do this retirement thing right.
Yes.
And this is where I'm like, should according to who? By what timeline? By what standard up in the sky that doesn't exist? Right. And so I would lovingly encourage you to think about our lives as seasons, right? 37 years is a long, amazing time where you are present for children and their families. I mean, that's huge. You've spent 1 year cultivating and kind of nourishing yourself. 1 year, 37. And so, something that I believe, is it a truth? No, but it's a choice I choose to believe. And I break this down in the book. I really think that procrastination is an amazing communication from our higher self to us. Saying, that it's because it's information. It's you telling you, hey, you want to do these things, but now is not the right time. Because it's not bolstered by inspiration. It's an idea. And so you could go forth, but the thing about procrastination is that it's telling you, you could go forth and force yourself to map out plans and do the thing, but the return will not be worth the investment because the components aren't lined up. The people aren't lined up. Your energy's not lined up. So just listen to it. And so what I invite everyone here, and it's a practice for me, is to really honor procrastination as really valuable information that maybe now is not the right time to act, or this isn't the ultimate path of least resistance to the path of most abundance. Okay, I'm going to listen to that. Now, if you're procrastinating on your bills and you need to pay them, there's sometimes brute force is required, but I'll guarantee you though, in your vision of what's wanted, none of you want to be delinquent on your bills. So the inspiration to pay your bills will hit you at some point before deadline. Right. But I would just say, please, if it's just if you can drop resistance to this relationship you have to what is, and just let it be and honor this as this winter season that you're going through, where you're kind of going within, and soon spring will come. You're planting the seeds, the blossoms will emerge, but to just be in that place of delight and curiosity instead of resistance and judgment, because guess what? It's gonna happen.
I love that. I feel released now.
Yes. Okay.
It's true. Well, plus you're doing, I mean, I know you're doing stuff because you're doing stuff with me. So I know you're doing, and and you're sharing your journey, with your beautiful grandkids and stuff too. So, but 1 year, you shoot, I'm thinking, I need to rest after that for, a year. It sounds pretty good. And just to collect your thoughts, just to give your whole mind, body, spirit time to sift out all the energetic changes and just to lighten it all up there. Yeah. Wow.
That definitely helps me to re-see, because it's not just the 37 years, but I've been taking care of family members for 60 years. And so I've always been focused, taking care of, my sister, focused with work, focused, blah, blah, everything. So you're right. This time is like a blessing to just relax and let things unfold. And then it'll, the path will open to that direction.
So absolutely. Absolutely. You know, the visual I have in my mind, have you all been in the airport, where they have those conveyor belts that allow you to walk and go faster down a gate? I feel like you've been on that conveyor belt and all of a sudden you've just stepped off of it and you're like, hold on, wait a minute. Why am I going so slow?
Yeah.
And so in the search for looking for the conveyor belt, you might be missing out on, oh, look at this beautiful painting that they're featuring the Aborigines of Australia. Wow, that's kind of cool, right? So it's just a different shift in momentum, but no less important and no less fruitful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks,
Yeah.
Barbara.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Barbara.
Very
Cheryl?
good.
Well, I'm just relating to what she was saying. I kind of jumped off that treadmill with my music. I think I explained that to you on other calls. And just have had a heck of a time getting back on it. And it's because I was burnt out. It was, I don't know, I played in a lot of different groups. There was a lot of rehearsals. There's a lot of responsibility. You're trying to balance all these balls. And I got into a new relationship and he kind of taught me how to slow down. And since I've slowed down, I'm finding it hard to find inside of me that get up and go again, to get back on that treadmill. So I'm thinking, when I was just listening a minute ago, I guess my brain was turning and I was thinking, I guess the procrastination that I'm doing is also a healing process. And once I'm bored of it, then I will be inspired and then I'll be back there, because I was actually listening to your book and you were talking about inspiration a lot, and that I could relate to that, because the reason why I was on that treadmill for many years was inspiring. I aspired to be in an orchestra that I wanted to be in, and I had to reach a certain level to get into that orchestra. And then I experienced that. Lots of different things. So I'm thinking, I guess when it settles down and I'm bored of what I'm doing, then that inspiration will come back. And then I'll be like, oh man, I got to get practicing because I've got this event or whatever. So I love for a lot of people on this call, possibly. I don't know.
Cheryl, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Absolutely. And I think there's so much wisdom in that. And, I think it can be helpful, for you, Barbara, and Cheryl, and everybody else. Also, too, to remember, it's what you're after is a feeling state, not an action, not a doing, not a plan. And so deep down, Cheryl, I'm going to bet that you're pretty happy with how you feel on a normal, like day-to-day basis. And when you compare that to the treadmill, there's a part of you that's like, do I want to go back to that feeling state versus this feeling state that I have? And the idea of what that treadmill life created might be exciting, but when it comes to how you want to feel on a day-to-day basis, I'm going to bet you really do appreciate the presence and the spaciousness that you are now living, so much so that you're not feeling so compelled to reach for that feeling state, because that's not desired, correct?
Yeah, I'm enjoying just having the grandkids over every once in a while, and my slower pace of life, finishing up work. I'm going to retire in 2 years, and just kind of regrouping maybe. And you're right. I feel calm and at peace with that kind of, but in my mind, I feel guilty.
Because there's the should. Because Cheryl, you know what? So let's just, like, there it is. All of us, it's so ingrained of us to have this should. So should implies that there's this fixed reality out there we have to align to in order to live the good life. Right? It's like there's this big book of shoulds up in the sky. You got to do it just like this. It doesn't exist. So see, you can release yourself from that
because
premise.
I think part of it is you think, wow, I put so much energy into the conservatory and all this discipline it takes to get to that level. And you think, did I lose it all? Because now someone will say to me, can you sit down and play this song? And I'm like, No, because I'm so rusty right now. I
Sure.
refuse to do that,
Yeah. Yeah.
So you think that I waste all that time?
No,
I guess not. I don't know.
no, but you know what? Given that you're a musician and it's in your blood and it's in your heart, I think your soul is waiting for that inspiration to come where you genuinely want to play for the joy of playing, not for the fear of not being prepared for rehearsal. Because I'm going to bet, because I'm a musician as well, I'm going to bet that a lot of the motives are in your, like, even as much as you like to rehearse and to play, there's always that, I got to keep up. And there's a bit of that fear-based desire that kept you going, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't want to go back to that, because what is that? That's resistance.
Yeah.
And so there's a part of your soul saying, hey, it's going to come, but it'll click. Like, there's going to be one day you're like, actually, I just want to play. I want to feel good at this.
Right.
And you're going to feel just compelled from the heart to sit down and work on it from a place of true desire, not from a place of should or fear. And
Right.
so just be
I
open
think
to
that
that.
might come when I retire, and it will be directed towards sharing my knowledge with children more than actually performing.
Oh my gosh. Did your heart just open when you heard that, everyone? I just got chills. I just got chills.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. It's just, I'm trying to figure it all out too. And this is very,
No,
Figure
feel
it
it out.
out.
Feel it out. Feel it out. You're not
yeah,
gonna say
feel
it.
it.
Feel it.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah. Really good.
Yeah, but some of our beliefs go pretty deep.
Mhm.
So
Oh, they
there's,
do.
yeah. Does anybody else have any questions that they'd like to ask, or any comments? Anybody else?
Yeah,
Okay,
Noelle.
Noelle.
Yeah.
Hi. I was listening, and I apologize to I think it was YouTube of you talking to a man who was off camera. Jen, you might know what it was. And
Oh,
I
Yeah.
apologize. I
Yeah.
wasn't able to catch all of it. I was doing stuff while I was listening. But one part of it really hit me that I heard, and I was just I wanted to see how it connects with this whole metric that you say everything relates to. So
Yeah.
it was the question, what do I stand for, or
Oh,
how do
yes. This
and it's been with me ever since. I think I listened to it, that I just heard that on Saturday, and every day I've been, what do I stand for? So how does it relate to this resistance?
Oh my goodness. So much. Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up, Noelle. This is one of my favorite conversations. And I'm trying to recall, I think that the YouTube you're referring to was years ago. It was one of my first
It was,
assistants. Yeah, with
older.
Casey. He's just a delight and one of my favorite people in the world. It was a great conversation. So this concept of, this is a big one. Okay. So I'm going to talk for a little bit because I want to give you all a framework to think about, to help you navigate with confidence. So this might help you, Maria. This is going to be a framework to help you be bold and really truly on purpose in more of your moments. And the question really revolves around this question: what do you stand for? And so we could look at that question from the perspective of, what do you stand for all time? I stand for, and we have this idea that it needs to be grandiose and huge and, life-changing and unique and important. And I say, that's interesting. We could think about that question from that lens, but really the way I like to think about this question is, what am I going to stand for right now? And so here's the kind of the framework. At every moment in time, right now, 5 minutes from now, for each and every one of us, we're always standing for something, but we're usually not aware of what it is. And the reason for that is because of the way our minds work. And I'll explain that in a moment, but let me give you an example. So in every moment, we're standing for something. You can think of it this way. It's an underlying primary objective in that moment, and we're usually not aware of it. It's there, but we're not aware of it. So for example, here I am, I'm doing this book talk with you all. Now, if I didn't know what I know, I could ultimately be standing for you all liking me, right? Or I could ultimately be standing for getting business. Or I could ultimately be standing for doing this right and getting it done on time. Or I could be standing for connection and empowerment, right? So in my case, I'm really
Wow.
clear that that's what I'm standing for. This isn't about anything other than that. And I'm clear about that. But I have to choose that, because guess what? A stance is going to come at work. There's going to be a stance, and oftentimes we're not aware. So here's another example. How many of you are married and have a partner? You live with someone. Okay. Now, how many times have you gotten into a tiff and you're in that normal argument and you're thinking to yourself, oh gosh, if God, I'm trying to do this just so we can finally be in harmony. And your noble self is convinced you're standing for harmony. No, let's be honest. You're standing for winning. Or you're standing for being right. And if he saw you as right, then you'd be in harmony, right? And so in every moment, there's this underlying stance. Here's another one that everybody gets. Have you ever had to give hard feedback to a colleague or to someone, and it was really hard, like someone you liked? Have you ever had to give hard feedback to a friend or a colleague and it's hard? Has they ever had that experience? Yeah. Good. Well, check this out. It's only hard for one reason. In that moment of opportunity, where you have an opportunity to give your colleague or friend some hard feedback, the only reason it's hard is because in that moment of opportunity, you are standing for something that you're not choosing, you didn't mean to, and it's not serving you. In that moment of opportunity, you are standing for avoiding conflict. You're standing for being liked. You're standing for protecting them from their feelings. You are not standing for their growth. So what I want you to think now is that in every moment, we have a spotlight that we get to control. We forget that we control it, but we control it. And we get to decide, what's this about? And so by not controlling the spotlight, by not owning what we are ultimately standing for in a moment, we're going to be kind of a victim to an unintentional stance. Here's a really big one that a lot of people resonate with. Does anybody here get nervous when you have to speak in front of people? Who gets nervous? Okay, so nervousness is really common. Well, guess what? You ready for
I don't
this?
have that problem.
Okay. Oh, good. Right. Well, and you know what? I'm going to tell you why, Jen. I'm going to break it down and make the invisible visible. The only reason we get nervous is because in that moment of opportunity, if we're about to speak and we've got the anxiety and the thing, not nerves of adrenaline, that's healthy and normal, but and you start to forget what you're going to say. Nervousness is simply a symptom that in that moment you are standing for something that you're not choosing, you don't mean to be, and it's not serving you. In that moment of opportunity, you are standing for looking good. You're standing for proving yourself. You're standing for avoiding judgment. You're standing for you. But here's the thing, you would never choose that. It just happens, and it has to do with our neurobiology, which I can explain in a moment. But still, what I want you to hear is that it just happens. You're standing, you're making this about you. This isn't about you. Why are you talking? And so we have an opportunity to go, no. This is about a connection. This is about empowerment. This is about possibility. This is about a call to action. I don't know. There's a reason you're talking, but the moment you claim it. So this is why I say, what will you stand for right now? What will you stand for? Boom. What are you going to make this about? In each of our moments, we get to choose what we're making this about. I get in an argument with my husband. It's like, oh, right. No, I'm not standing for winning. I'm not standing for being right. Oh, I'm standing for connection, right? If I get in a tiff with my own children, right, I might default to standing for principle and my discipline. No. I'm standing for coming together and learning and growing together. Right. And so what that conversation is, I'm pretty sure it's been a while since I did it, but it's this agency we have moment by moment where we get to choose our focal point. And when we have the ability to choose our focal point, here's what's so great about that. And here's now where it plays in with resistance. If we're not careful, and let me just break this down. Here's why a stance just happens that doesn't serve us. Now, remember, if you read in the book, rejection is death to the brain, right? So on a neurobiological level, we are doing whatever we can to avoid social rejection, threats, and all of that. So that's constantly going, which determines our perception and how we think and the decisions we make on a non-cognitive level. Okay, that's going on. But here's what else is really important. The conscious mind that feels so busy, the one that's right here with me, listening, that's noting the time, that's wondering what's for dinner, that's wondering what you're going to do tomorrow, that's wondering when this is going to be over, that feels so busy, that process is at a rate of 40 neuronal synaptic connections per second, 40, okay? The subconscious mind processes at a rate of 40 million neuronal synaptic connections per second. Because then you're going to think, oh my God, like there's so much more going on than I realized. That is true. And so what I share that because you're going to be going about your days and you're going to slip into a stance that you didn't really choose. This is about winning. This is about being right. This is about looking good. This is about playing safe. This is about being liked. This is about, but you wouldn't choose that if given the choice. It just happens because it's in the 40 million neuron per second soup. So if you care about how you feel, that's step one. Step two is to catch when you don't feel great. That is, oh my gosh, chances are I'm probably standing for something that's not serving me. Well, what happens when we're standing for something that's not serving us, it's going to inevitably create an internal dialogue around this self-preoccupation. What do they think? Oh my gosh. And so there's all of this resistance and all of our bandwidth is jammed up in ways that just don't serve us. Like, I got to look good. What are they thinking about me? Am I being liked? Right? So all of that is just, again, it's holding this out while you're trying to operate. So when you choose a stance, no, this is about empowerment. So I'm going to go back to Maria, how Maria was saying, I want to travel, but I'm nervous to go out on my own. It's like, okay, well, you can stand for playing it super safe, or you can stand for your expansion. You can stand for connections with others. You can stand for growing your perceptual horizon. Now, just notice by claiming that as a focal point, this is about expanding my perceptual horizon. This is about my growth. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, all those resources now get channeled into that one focal point. And this is where innovation, creativity, eloquence, influence, clarity come from. And so when we're deliberate about this as a practice and we claim what we will stand for in our moments more often than not, we get rid of that resistance that's cycling in the background that keeps us from being clear, from being bold, and from being confident. Yeah. So that's a lot of me talking. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, you're very captivating. I remember, Noelle, it was we didn't see the person, but it was a younger man from what I sounded like to me. And he was talking about he overthinking things. He didn't want to overthink it before he said it because he didn't feel authentic. And you then made it clear that, well, thinking about what we say before we say it is some form of kindness or something. I mean, you ended up turning the whole conversation into something like, wow. And yeah, I remember that because the next day when I did the reading, Noelle, I'm like, I came on, I'm like, hey, everybody, this is day number 1270. And I stand for space for women. And I'm like, really owning the space. And I'm like, well, because it made me think too. It made me think too, what it is that we stand for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Two quick things because we gotta wrap it up.
Yeah. But I do want to go back I'll let you, Jen, but back to Noelle. So it's something, so if that question does resonate, like if it's like, wow, what do I stand for? It is so nourishing to just go ahead and go for the big one too. Like in my case, I just have decided that I stand for raising the vibration of consciousness. That's what I stand for. And that is the singular lens that I choose to look through in most of my moments. Now, is it appropriate in all moments? Well, maybe not grocery shopping, maybe not walking the dog. I mean, maybe it is, but it can be a-okay to be like, what is it that, like, it could be just increasing the happiness level on the planet. It could be about, teaching compassion. How do you decide? But it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be crazy. It just has to feel amazing when you think about it. Yeah.
Sure. Anybody else have any questions? Because we're going to ask Amy to I'm gonna let her just, I mean, I wanted, there's a couple more. I just didn't want you have the, know that life is working for you, not to you, and your worthiness requires no validation. And just one quick question then. Do you
Yeah.
consider this a spiritual practice?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, it's, and do I say that to everybody? Well, it's really, it comes up when it's relevant for people that's like, yeah, it is a spiritual practice. Does it have to be seen as a spiritual practice? No, it could be seen as a perceptual practice. And so this is where, you know, for me, it's a spiritual practice. Yeah. And what do I
just
mean
started
by that?
feeling that way,
Yeah, I know
yeah.
it help. Could I double click on that? Like, what does that actually mean? Well, I would say, you know, I really do subscribe to this idea that there's so much more going on than we can fathom. Like we've got these small ability to really understand, and there's just so much beyond our five senses that we can process and comprehend. And you know, and I really take solace in knowing that and feeling that, and that there's something bigger here. And so I do rest upon that sort of faith, and you know, to really think through a lot of these perceptual shifts. Is it required? No. You could take on these choices as just simple choice, as profound choices and as perceptual shifts. But for me personally, it's a spiritual practice. Yeah.
Well, as I'm reading it, I'm like, this feels like a spiritual, but so, you know, so is self-discipline and a lot of other things, you know, so
Yes.
it depends, I guess, what eyes. Any final thoughts, Amy? Anything you'd like to say before we?
Yeah. You know, I thank you. Something that I think is helpful to share is, you know, and this comes up a lot in coaching, you know, when we're going through the process of transformation, inevitably, you know, if we're doing the real deep work and not just communication work, but the real deep work, and one confronts that question, what are you most afraid people are going to find out or decide? Oh, and I'm like, oh God, I'm not worthy. And when one really identifies, wow, I am choosing to believe I'm unworthy. I am, and it's either new news or it's old news, but we get to that point where they get that they're choosing it. I just want to share that I get how frustrating it is that, like, wow, I get it. I get that I'm choosing to believe that I'm not worthy. Wow, I get it that I'm choosing to believe that I'm not good enough, or that I'm not competent, or that I'm weak, or whatever it might be. I get how frustrating it is, because it's not that, oh, hey, great, look, you just discovered this. It's like, no, that's not the work. The challenge is, I get you don't know how to choose otherwise. It's like, I get that I'm choosing I'm not good enough, but how the heck do I choose otherwise? And so the reason I wrote this book was because it's not so much identifying that we're choosing that, it's getting to a perceptual place where we can choose otherwise. And so the roadmap, when you follow it all the way through, it really is about making a new choice accessible. Because you get that, yeah, I'd love to choose to know that I'm whole and complete. How do I do that? Right? You get that it's a choice, but it doesn't feel accessible. And so this book, and I deeply, intimately get this. This book has been written and formatted to get people to that place of accessible choice, where it feels like, okay, I totally get this. I get how I am whole and complete, and I get the work to actually just choose it. Aha, I get that. And so that was really important to me, because I didn't want this to just be another book like, hey, think better thoughts and you'll be on your way. It's like, well, yeah, but you got to organically derive for yourself that truth. And so that's really what this is about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. If you, thank you so very
Oh,
much.
you're
If
so
you'd like to
welcome.
work with Amy directly, you can contact her at her website, which is alwaysonpurpose.com.
Yeah.
You'll also find free sample of her book there, where you can read a free sample of her book. There's other free PDF articles. There's lots and lots, like 5 pages of articles that the articles are like 3-step process to always living on purpose, how to work with procrastination,
Yeah.
strengthen your awareness, slow the aging process with perspective, and more, just tons and tons more. You can also connect with Amy on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Yeah. And truth be
Uh,
told, I'm actually really not on Facebook and Instagram. I'm just not. I mean, you can connect, but I'm rarely on those platforms. I'm definitely more on LinkedIn, but feel free to try. You just won't find me hanging out there too much.
it's time, you know.
Yeah.
But I'll send all this information out tomorrow
Great.
in the follow-up email along with the replay link. Yeah,
Yeah.
Amy, thank you again for sharing so openly.
Oh, of
Grateful for your
course.
time and energy. Thank you, ladies, for sharing
Thank
so
you
much
for-
tonight also.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time to hang out with me. Like I said, it's really an honor, and well, hey, we're all on this journey together, you know, just doing our best to thrive. And I so honor you being here.
Thank
and
you. Thank you so
being
much.
part of it.
Living on purpose. What a
Yeah.
great message. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah. Thank you so
gratitude.
much.
And
All right.
gratitude.
Take care. I look forward to being
Namaste.
in touch, everybody. Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you, ladies.